Welcome to RPV City Talk. RPV City Talk is brought to you by the City of Rancho Palos Verdes to inform the community on recent city matters. RPV City Talk is a weekly show that features the RPV Mayor, City Council, or City employees.
Thanks so much for joining us on City Talk. I'm Maria Serrao, and today we have the opportunity to go one-on-one with Councilman Jim Knight. So Jim, we're here in your backyard, and I am sitting down talking to another fellow native from California. You grew up not very far away from here in Santa Monica. How long did you live there?
Well, I was born in Santa Monica. I lived there until I was about 20 years old. I back and forth. I'd been to college and left, and then came back home for a while, and then I moved out about when I was about 20 years old or so.
What was it like going back to even your elementary school days? Obviously, you've seen a lot of changes in the area. I know you were a surfer, hanging out at the beach. I mean, that was pretty much life in Southern California, wasn't it?
Yeah, where I grew up, and it was in the early 50s, and a lot of the areas around where I lived were just vacant lots, and I used to go and watch butterflies and caterpillars, and exploring these open areas, and it certainly has changed a lot. It's all completely filled in now. And yes, when I was a teenager, I enjoyed surfing quite a bit up around the Malibu Beach and Trancas up the coast there.
Oh, yeah.
And
Interesting, because when you're growing up in an area like that and you just think it's sort of like everyday life, this is how everybody lives, but your parents came from Oklahoma, which is obviously very different. What were their perceptions of California when they first came here?
Well, I'm not sure what the perceptions were. My dad came out here after the war, and he was offered a job working as an attorney in downtown Los Angeles. But their roots and who they are were from Oklahoma City, and I think a lot of the values that they have been instilled in me. Caring about your fellow neighbor, and getting by with what you have. And they lived through the Depression, and just appreciating every day you live.
Right. It was probably a very different time. Like you said, it was 50 some years ago, so it was a lot less built up. Mm-hmm. You're very connected to nature, and you had mentioned that your grandmother was from Colorado. Talk about the times that you would go back there and what your impressions of Colorado were.
Well, actually, my grandmother was also from Oklahoma City, but many people in Kansas and Oklahoma City, to escape the heat, would have a second home up in the Colorado Rockies.
Right.
So in 1921, my grandmother herself built her own cabin in the hills, and so ever since I was a baby, I'd always come out to stay with her, and the family would stay with her as well. And she taught me a lot about appreciating nature, and because the acreage that was around her, she taught me how to take care of the particular vegetation there, and appreciation for the natural world around me. And so it was a strong influence for me all through those years.
What's Oklahoma like? You've been back there several times.
Yeah, it's my uncle was a farmer in Oklahoma, and I'd go out and visit him as well. And they're kind of a type of person that wants to take care of themselves. It's kind of self-sufficient, and if his tractor would break down, he'd go out in the back 40, pick out some iron, and weld on a new part for it. Instead of going down the store like we do today, just buy a part.
Right.
He'd make his own, but it wasn't that. He'd end up with a part that was probably 10 times stronger he could buy at the store. And so it's that kind of self-sufficient type of mentality, and also people really cared for each other. They looked after each other, because Oklahoma was hit really hard during the Depression with the Dust Bowl. And so people really cared about each other.
Even in Palos Verdes, here where we are now, people really do care about the land, and there are areas here where people are just so unfamiliar with, Yes,
that's one of the things that attracted me to move down here, because I'm kind of a country boy at heart with all my background.
Yep.
I worked hard to try and preserve the natural open space around here, because it's something that I've seen in my childhood get lost where I moved in, lived in for all my life in my younger ages, and there's so much to be wonder that what we have around us in the natural world, and this area down here had a lot of areas that were still had a lot of the native habitat and the flora and fauna down here. So it's something for not only for adults, but I think it's great for children too.
Right.
To make, because as a child I made that connection with nature, And for me to share that and have children have the opportunity to come out and make that connection, I think is very important. I think it's a part of our makeup, of our psyche as who we are as people.
You know, talk about that, because we touched on it a little bit. You know, we need nature, we need the ocean and the land just to sort of help you get through the day, I think, as people.
I think having an area, a natural space, open space to go into, it offers the opportunity for people to kind of self-reflect and kind of calm and make a connection with something outside of all the daily grind we have to go through. There's another world out there that we can connect with that's beautiful, it's peaceful, and it's not going to attack us.
Right, yeah.
You know, I mean, we're not going to be, you know, challenged by it in that sense, and we can have a introspection for ourselves, and that's important to have. And so I think, you know, I studied urban design at USC, and one of my projects was to design a city.
Wow.
And what I did was I took a big open space in the center and designed all of the human buildings around it.
Wow.
And so everybody had access to this open space that they could go to for a little bit of peace and quiet, and then go back in and do their work, what they're doing in the everyday grind of living.
Sort of like Central Park.
That's right, how Central Park was designed, yeah.
Now, in addition to this, you also are an avid lover of music. So talk about that. I know you traveled around Europe and fell in love with Middle Eastern music, and you play some instruments. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I was in a rock and roll band in junior high school and high school, and that was great fun. I had a great fun doing that. And then I was offered, a friend of mine and I used to make student films together, and he was a graduate at UCLA.
Okay. Oh, don't mix those up.
Yeah, right. UCLA, film department, and he got an assignment to make a film around the world, and he called me up and said I needed somebody to help me with camera and sound and so on. So I said, yeah, okay, and I dropped what I was doing. I was a young guy, you know, young people can just drop what they're doing and just leave, you know? I didn't have any obligations.
Right.
So I traveled with him around the world making this film, and as I was traveling,
amazing,
I was exposed to all kinds of different types of music of different cultures, and it just fascinated me. The different rhythms, and the different intonations, and the way they express themselves with music. And on the way back, I had picked up what's called a Turkey saz. It's a string instrument from Turkey. It's a traditional folk piece of instrument. And I was in the London airport, just ready to get back to California. And I had been to Iran, and I had a long Persian lamb's wool coat on, long hair, and a Turkey saz in my hand. And a woman comes up to me and says, "Do you speak English?" I said, "Yeah, I'm from California." So she said, "Oh, I have this belly dancing group in Los Angeles. I'd love you to join it. You know, we have musicians, we play music." I said, "Well, I really don't know how to play the instrument that well," but so we exchanged addresses. I didn't think much of it. She got in touch with me, and sure enough, I went, learned the music from the Middle Eastern musicians, loved it, and from there branched out to an international folk ensemble. It's called the Alman Folk Ensemble. I was giving a demonstration at the UCLA Ethnomusicology Department with a fellow musician for the students there studying ethnomusicology in graduate school. And the guy came up to me and said, "Would you like to join Alman?" And I said, "What's Alman?" I hadn't ever heard of it. So, "Well, we're going on tour in 2 weeks. We need a Middle Eastern musician."
Oh my gosh.
And I said, "Well, sure, why not?" Again, I was a young guy, no commitments to anything.
No, but what great experience.
Yeah, so then I joined that group, and from there I continued to learn different music from different cultures and actually learn the instruments and how to play them, and performed in the group.
Is that something you still do today?
No, the group is no longer there. I do play Middle Eastern music with a friend of mine on occasion, but I don't do as much. I don't have as much time. I do want to get back into it, but I just haven't had much time to do it.
You know, that's another good psyche thing, you know, because it really releases your creative flow, and that's amazing.
It's true. It taps into a part of yourself that allows you to express yourself and your creativity, and you're doing it with another group of musicians that have the same frame of mind.
Yep.
And it is wonderful. I love it.
And what were your musical influences growing up? I know you were in a rock and roll band.
My mother, of course, had me learn piano, well, like all kids are supposed to learn.
Yes.
Well, I would sneak off to my friend's house and play his guitar, because it was Peter, Paul, and Mary at the time. There's folk music was happening. So I was learning all that music. I was practicing and learning my piano, but my real heart was in the guitar and what was happening with the folk scene and the music scene at that time. So that's kind of was my influence in that direction.
Interesting. So eventually you got married and you met your wife, and she was a dancer, is that right?
That's right. She was a dancer with the Almond Folk Ensemble.
Okay.
We traveled together and got to know each other working in the group. And we actually, even after we were married, we traveled together and did some performances around the country. And she had the dance interest and I had the music interest.
Now, and then how did you get here to Rancho Palos Verdes? When did you sort of end up here?
Well, I was living in Venice Beach up here, up the coast, South Santa Monica, for about 17 years. And that's during my musical period when I was earning part of my living playing music and part what I was doing in real estate at the time. And I was I was refurbishing older buildings in Venice.
Right.
And I wanted to preserve the culture that was there because I felt that my colleagues that were real estate investors were all ripping down the old places and building brand new places.
Yeah.
And I felt that, I guess it's my Oklahoma background, that what's wrong with this old place? It just needs a little fixing, you know?
Exactly, yeah.
Plus, to me, it had so much charm, these older buildings. And so that's what I did during those 17 years I was in the Venice area. And then I met my wife, and then we moved to Westchester, and that was fine. I loved Westchester, but a little bit too much airport noise for us.
Right.
And so we searched down here, and I had a fellow musician that I worked with Amon that lived up the street here.
Wow.
And he said, "Oh, you got to come down to Portuguese Bend and see what's down here." And I said, "Well, I don't know. It's kind of far down there, you know." So we came down, and we fell in love with it, the area down here. Just bought a place down here and moved down here.
You know, did you ever think that you would have a public life back then when you first moved here?
I didn't think I would necessarily have a public life. I've always been involved in the community.
Okay.
I've always wanted to try and be engaged to try and make where I live as good a place as I can. And again, maybe it's the Oklahoma roots. You care about other people. You want to try and make it a nice place for everybody to live. And so I've been involved in terms of development and trying to guide development for years that in a proper direction. Venice is a good example. I wanted to preserve the older buildings, so I was trying to guide my other fellow colleagues to do what I was doing. It turns out that my model was actually better than their model.
Wow.
Because they had all the expense of demolition of the older building and the new construction of the new building. And all I had to do was remodel the existing structure of what I had, and I got the same rent per square foot that they did because I had the charm of Old Venice. So I was able to incorporate an economic model that was actually better than what they had, but it also had this other benefit to the community, you know, in terms of preserving that culture. So I've always been kind of wanting to be engaged to try and make the place we live in as best we can and preserve something that can be lost very easily by not having that holding steadfast of what is there that has a quality.
Do you remember the first building that you preserved?
Yes, it was a little duplex. It's a little duplex on Rialto Avenue, and beautiful hardwood floors, gorgeous kind of clear story windows with built-in hutches. And this place actually had a refrigerator. They built a cabinet that had not chicken wire, but like a metal grate, and you put the ice at the bottom, and the coolness of this cabinet would keep your fruit and vegetables cool.
Wow.
And so I kept that.
Oh, interesting.
And people just use it to put their things into, but you know, I kept some of those elements of the older building. So I do remember it quite well. Beautiful hardwood floors and some few stained glass window areas, and just, I mean, you know, once I was done remodeling it, it was really charming.
Well, I was just going to say, it adds so much charm when you can take something older and you know, fix it up and still keep the history there.
Absolutely, and like I say, I was getting the same rent per square foot, and my colleagues that were spending twice as much as me to get to that point.
Right. Okay, speaking of points, you actually had the first PowerPoint presentation. Tell us about that when you came to Palos Verdes.
Yeah, so when I first came to Palos Verdes, there was a proposal to put a golf course in the City Hall area.
Right.
And again, I thought that was fundamentally wrong. You were taking an area that the public and children could enjoy,
Right.
an open space, converting it to a private use. They said the golf course was a public golf course, but I couldn't take my family and picnic there.
Right.
On a golf course. You have to pay the fee and have to play golf. So it was taking, to me, a quality of life away from people. So I got involved in trying to preserve that. I got involved with Barbara Gleghorn and some other people with SOC 2, where they had the same concept I had of trying to preserve this area. And I had learned in the past that it's not good enough to just go run around with protest signs, we don't like this, we don't like this. I mean, that's important, but to express yourself. But what I had learned from previous areas I'd lived in to trying to guide what I felt was proper development or lack of thereof, was to come up with an alternative plan. Mm-hmm. And I studied urban planning at USC, so I knew how to put something together, package something together. So I came up with a completely alternative plan, and I made a PowerPoint presentation of this alternative plan, and the city had never seen this before. And so I had to project it onto a blank wall because there's no screens or anything.
Right.
And so it made quite an impression, not only on the Planning Commission, but on the City Council. I actually drawn up a map too, but the PowerPoint presentation was the strongest thing for that. And at the end of the day, actually my alternative plan was an alternative in the EIR as well.
Right.
So that really helped. And I realized that decision makers, you have a developer who has a very well articulated plan, mm-hmm. Then you have these people out there that say, we don't like it.
Right.
And as a decision maker, what do you have to go from to oppose what the developer is proposing? So they had an alternative plan in place, and they could look at both and weigh them out, and the community input and so on. And so as a result, they did not allow the golf on the City Hall site, and today that is a preserve with
Right.
trails, and it has a conservation easement on it.
It's interesting that you're on one side of the City Council, and now you're on the other side.
Yeah, and actually, I don't see any contradiction in that. I don't see any problem because when people come to me with issues, I listen to them and I try to address how to resolve the problems. And that's what I think my function is to hear what the concerns are and find a solution to it. Mm-hmm. And so that's true. I was on the other side at that time, but it's a two-way street.
Absolutely. Yeah. Is that what kind of made you want to run or want to be a part of the City Council? Or what
well, actually, I originally got on the Planning Commission, was assigned on the Planning Commission, and got an intimate knowledge of their development code, and tried to make some improvements over the years on the development code as well. And it came up where some open seats were there, and I felt I wanted to move to the next position where I can help guide the city, what I feel is preserving the quality of life we have, and in trying to make those improvements that we all need.
Do you feel like most of the people that live in this area sort of feel the same way about that? Or, I mean, it seems like overwhelmingly people have the same philosophy you do, at least here.
Well, I think a lot of people have moved here for a reason, and part of that reason is the beauty we have here with the natural open space.
For sure.
It is a unique place in Los Angeles. You go out to the other areas and there's not much open space. And we have a beautiful coastline too. I mean, not just the terrestrial part, but the coastline too is phenomenal. So yes, people have moved here, and so the whole reason the city was formed was to preserve that.
Right.
I mean, if it weren't for those hardworking people at the beginning, the county would have had high-rise condominiums all along the coastline here.
Yeah, it's
it would have changed everything. So I'm thankful to those original people with that vision. And the general plan they put together, when I was in the Planning Commission 35 years later, the visions set forth then were relevant today.
Is that your vision, do you think, also for the next maybe 10, 20 years here in Rancho Palos Verdes?
I think in perpetuity. I think in perpetuity. I really feel people's quality of life is enhanced by having natural open space to connect with.
Right.
I mean, obviously you have to have places to live and the commercial and business and shopping and so on. But if you properly mix that together, that person's quality of life goes up. And I would say the property values here would probably reinforce that. The people are willing to pay the money to live in a place like we have down here. So I see no reason to take a different course.
A lot of people say that they see you walking around a lot. Is that sort of your time to reflect when you're walking around the community, or?
Oh yeah. I mean, I can just go out my front door and walk up the street, and I feel there's beautiful trees to look at and natural space, and I can go up on the trails up above. And yeah, that's part of my life.
Yep.
That's how I keep my balance of what I'm doing as well.
Do you think you see the same place but find something new all the time as well when you're walking?
Yes, I do. I mean, but even if I find the same thing, it's almost a comforting feeling that that's still there.
That's right.
That, they didn't get torn down or ripped up or thrown out, or it's still there. I can watch the seasons of the plants change, and they come back up. They die back in the fall and winter, and they come back in the spring. And it's that connection with something that's permanent, really, in a certain sense. Right. I mean, so much of our life can be so impermanent. It just changes and fluxes, and we get thrown this and throw that curve, and to come back to something that's steady is comforting.
Yeah. Do you see yourself staying here maybe for the rest of your life, or?
I see no reason to move, but you never know what happens with your life. But I think I found a place that I'm very, very happy with.
The view's okay. It's okay.
Yes, no, I really, yeah,
I think so.
That's true. I mean, in a certain sense, I have a nice view of the ocean, Catalina, but in a certain sense, sometimes you kind of take it for granted, but then every once in a while, something will happen, and the light will go in Catalina, and there's clouds just floating across the ocean. You go, wow. This is just phenomenal.
Yeah, I took pictures from where we were up at City Hall, and over a period of time, I'd go to the same place to take the picture. And after about 2 years, I laid them all out, and it was the most amazing thing because every single one of them looked different. Even though it was still Catalina, it was still the ocean, but it was just an amazing difference. Colors and just everything. So
I love watching the storms come here in the winter. They come across, you can watch them progress, you can see the rain coming off the ocean heading toward you, or I've even seen water spouts off here too. And so that's the connection with the world around, a connection with something greater than just yourself. And
sure.
That's, I think it's important for everybody to have.
Very true. Jim Knight, thank you for spending some time with us today.
My pleasure.
And a very big thank you to Councilman Jim Knight for inviting us into his home today. And a big thank you to you for watching. I'm Maria Serrao, and we'll see you next time on City Talk.